Okay, if everybody could take their seats, we're going to get started. Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular council meeting for Tuesday, February the 4th. It's currently 7 o'clock. Before we get started, the Village of Anmore would like to open our meeting by recognizing the many Indigenous peoples of our areas, including the following First Nations with communities that are located in the region that we now know as Metro Vancouver. They would be the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Coquitlam. Further, we'd like to honor the important place in history occupied by the many tutorial keepers of these lands and waters around us since time immemorial. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. Approval of the agenda. Could I get someone to move the approval of the agenda? Moved, seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Move on to public input. Anybody want to come forward and ask anything about on the agenda item? I can tell you that for the procedure bylaw, item 9C will be offered again during the specific agenda item. So if anybody wants to speak to that specific item, they can during the meeting. But any public input? Okay. It has to be pertaining to the agenda. So if you name and address, please.
The Anmore South development. I've been a resident of Anmore for about 3 years. I'm part of the TORCA board of directors. I'm a volunteer for the First Anmore Scouts as well. And I'm currently renting in countryside, and I would like to be able to one day be able to afford a property in Anmore, a place that I call home, a place where my kid goes to school. And as part of my efforts with TORCA and the master plan development for trails, for connectivity, I think Anmore South is a great location and with a lot of potential. So I just want to encourage you guys to please continue with the process and move forward, and let's action this as soon as possible.
Good. Thank you. Any other public comments regarding the agenda for tonight? Okay. See none, we'll move on. We have no delegations. The minutes of the regular council meeting held on January 21st, 2025. Before I move the recommendation, there is one error, and that's on page 10 of the draft minutes. Page 10, but it's actually page 5 of the meeting, so it says draft at the very top. It was actually opposed at the top. It was defeated, opposed Weberink, and opposed Richardson. It shouldn't be Trowbridge. Yeah, okay. So with that change, could I get someone to move the recommendation that the minutes be adopted? Second, any discussion? See none, all those in favor? Opposed, carried. Any business arising from the minutes? None. Move on to parking regulation and enforcement bylaw and highway regulation bylaw review. This is a report dated on January 31st. Unfortunately, our bylaw person is in bed sick, as is many of our staff, but we have Miss Elric. Oh, we have Mr. Boyd has arisen, so we also have Miss Elric, who will just briefly talk us to this report.
Thank you, Mayor McEwen. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yep.
Okay, so this report is before council this evening in terms of a review that was done of our parking regulations and highway regulation bylaw related to parking also. Staff is seeking direction on whether council wishes staff to come back with bylaw amendments to include the recommendations in the report. So essentially, the recommendations in terms of the updates, the main update for definitions is to update the boulevard, highway, and municipal highway and public utility definitions. Currently, the definitions are inconsistent throughout the various bylaws, which makes it very difficult to apply enforcement tactics when necessary. So just making that language consistent throughout. In terms of the parking regulation and enforcement bylaw, some housekeeping changes that would be also related to that boulevard change, so we don't need to include no parking on a pathway and walkway, because that would be included. The part of the bylaw that's named Ravenswood Drive resident parking, we would want to add the elementary resident parking to update the permitted parking that is on elementary as a result of the Anmore Resident Decal program. And then some updates on the map that would come forward. Recommendations or removal of the marking of the resident parking on Sunnyside Road near Alderway Birchwin, as this is replaced by the multi-use pathway, so there's no longer parking available in that area. Additionally, to clarify the available parking for residents on elementary, to add some no parking restrictions on Kinsey, up to and including a section of Ridge Mountain. There was some sight line issues identified there. There are currently no parking signs on Hummingbird. However, our bylaw does not prescribe that is a no parking area. So again, would be challenging to enforce that when the signage is in conflict with our bylaw. And then some adjustment of the resident only parking on Ravenswood, supported by some additional signage just for better traffic and safety flow. Excuse me, one sec. In terms of the highway regulation bylaw updates, again, it's just clarifying language. The regulate to make sure that the regulation goes with the traffic flow and the curbside, which right now it's unclear. This will help with regulation or with enforcement as well, and update related to the boulevard. Now there's some general housekeeping updates for the bylaw notice enforcement bylaw, which is our bylaw that we would use to apply fines. And that would just be updating section numbers. And staff is also suggesting updating the penalties to ensure that all the fine amounts are aligned and correlate with one another. For instance, some fines right now are $100, some are $200, some are $400. So in order to set expectations and have them aligned throughout the bylaws for similar violations, staff is proposing that we update all of the fines to $200, which is generally what the most of the fines are currently. And then one additional thing that staff wanted to bring forward for council's consideration, if council wishes to include this, is we currently have a temporary parking permit program where you can get temporary parking permit available for day use. So often it's used if people are having an event at their house or something like that. But we do often get complaints related to construction parking and activities around construction sites. So staff is recommending introducing a weekly permit, which would be a 7-day continuous permit for a fee of $125. Limits could be placed on the number of weeks that this would be allowed. And then what would happen under this program is they would come in, apply for their temporary parking permit on a weekly basis, and would be provided with signage that would show, upon review from our bylaw enforcement officer, it would show the areas that they could park. The signage, temporary signage, would go up there, and then all of their vehicles that they're using on site could be parked in between those signs. Then if the user of the permit had any issues with others parking within their permitted area or anything else, they would then report to bylaw. It would help in terms of enforcement, A, and B, safety, just being able to have our bylaw officer set the parameters of where would be the most appropriate place for this additional temporary parking. So that would be something that staff would seek direction should council wish to move forward with that. So the recommended option would be that staff be directed to report back to council with bylaw amendments to include the recommendations outlined in the report dated January 31st, 2025 from the bylaw enforcement officer entitled Parking Regulation and Enforcement Bylaw and Highway Regulation Bylaw Review.
Could I get someone to move the recommendation? Moved. Seconded? Seconded? Before we get started, there's just a few things, Ms. Ork. First of all, I thought the report long overdue, and it's great. It's a great report from Mr. Comrie from our bylaw officer. There was a couple things, though, that I just wanted to point out.
Sure.
Number one, the construction having a weekly parking thing, this is a great idea. We've had issues with that. Making sure that, you know, as the village gets more and more built out, parking is a bit more challenging, and so we need to be able to facilitate that during the construction process. On page 23, there's a map which actually shows the village, and he's highlighted areas that are red, which would be no parking, and highlighted areas that would be green, that parking would be allowed. There's a couple issues. There's one big issue that I have. Ms. Orrick, yeah?
So, Mayor McEwen, that is the attachment to the current parking bylaw. That's the schedule that's on the current parking bylaw. So
Okay.
the updates would reflect what was indicated in the report, unless there's something else that council wants to flag.
Well, one of the things that really stood out for me is and it's the entrance to Ravenswood right beside our facility, and how one side of the road is currently green all on the north side of Ravenswood and goes all the way up literally right to this building. And I can tell you, by traveling that S-term on a daily basis, it is very, very dangerous in regards to cars coming through there. So we certainly need to make sure, I would almost request that there be no parking on Ravenswood up until the first sort of roundabout, which was, I think, one of the initial plans of Ravenswood, that there wouldn't be any parking. It is very tight at this end of Ravenswood. Now, I know that will probably change a little bit if we're able to reroute that road straight out to Sunnyside, but I think whatever the report says, that area there definitely has to be a no parking area there, and all for a bit up Ravenswood. The second thing is just to identify, there's two trailhead connections, one at the top of I think it's Black Bear, right at the very top there, that we're going to have to be able to facilitate some parking. The other one is down on Summerwood Lane. There's a trailhead there that actually goes down to Mossam Creek as well. So if we could just identify those three things. So I'll open up for council. Any questions, comments? Councillor Webering.
Yeah, just on that weekly permit for $125, does that accommodate several cars, or is that per car?
That would accommodate several cars. That would be for whatever area was identified through the application and upon review of the bylaw enforcement officer.
Okay. And then the other thing, I just wanted to sort of throw this out there. We've gone so heavy on no parking everywhere, and I think originally it was because of Bunsen Lake and people were parking everywhere and it was causing a problem. I think that is somewhat resolved, and now I'm feeling we're the community that isn't welcoming to visitors to come and hike in our trailheads, even for our own residents sometimes to park when they see friends. I'm just wondering if we could create a few sort of kind of further to what Mayor McEwen was talking about at trailheads and certain areas that we could just accommodate a little bit of parking. And if people do want to park there and go to the lake, then they can. But it seems we're kind of heavy-fisted here. And I just wonder if there could be a staff recommendation to look into those areas. I don't know if there's any appetite on council for it.
Well, it's a report to come back, so certainly those comments could be added in, that we look at more parking. Absolutely. Any other comments? Councillor Rich? I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Sorry, Councillor Trowbridge, sorry.
Sorry, John, I put my hand up, but you couldn't see it. Yeah, relative to the 125, so it's multiple vehicles, but for some of the projects we've had, they're a year long. Is 6,500 reasonable relative to other municipalities?
Mr. Boyd,
Sorry.
do you want to answer that, or? Go ahead, Mr.
Sorry,
I can maybe-
6,500 in terms of the part in terms of the fee that would be charged?
Yes, that's,
So we would recommend that it would be still temporary parking, so it would be a maximum amount allowable. Most building sites within the village do have space to accommodate parking on site for the most part, with exceptions of certain points of construction or concrete pours, those types of things. So the expectation, I think, generally would still be that most of the parking is contained on site. And this would be something that would be a tool that we can use, when that isn't able to be accommodated. And certainly if there is a larger scope project or something quite out of the ordinary that would be extraordinary, we could bring that forward, as staff to council to consider some other temporary measures.
yeah, because if you look at, Cordovados, Bellaterra, all those, they're going to be building scratch built homes, and they're going to take anywhere from 9 to 12 months per home. And don't get me wrong, I'm in support of the 125 for temporary parking. However, I just don't want to make things punitive for someone trying to build somebody a home.
Of course.
Good, something to consider when the report and the bylaws are drafted. Perfect. Any other question, comments? See none? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move on to 9B, 120 Hemlock Drive zoning amendment bylaw number 696-2024, memo to council dated May 7th from Mr. Joseph. Where are you? There you are. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor McEwen. Bylaw number 696-2024 was presented to council for first and second reading on May 7th, 2024. A public hearing was held for this bylaw on June 18th, 2024, and received third reading at the June 18th, 2024 regular council meeting. The bylaw has received all of its, the bylaw is now before council for adoption, and the May 7th report is attached for council's information. All requirements are received for the bylaw amendment, as well as the CAC was received by the village. And so for the motion on the table, a little lost here, is that council adopt the Village of Anmore zoning amendment bylaw number 696-2024. Thank you.
Someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Any discussion? Oh, Councilor Webber.
So part of this, I'm trying to, this is right on Montgomery Lane here. I'm trying to think what the frontage is there. Does that all get improved as part of a subdivision? Like a curb and everything properly paved in front of the house?
Through the chair, so you're asking if Montgomery Lane is part of the frontage for the subdivision?
No, where that lot will appear on Montgomery Lane, are there improvements to Montgomery Lane that where the lot is fronted on? So like curbing, and I don't know if it's all paved there. I can't remember.
Only half of it was paved initially from the initial proponent, which was the gentleman at the end of Montgomery Lane.
Right.
So there is going to have to be some roadwork improvements to facilitate. Is that what you're
Yeah,
asking?
that's exactly what I'm asking.
Sure, yeah, I mean, for the purposes of the rezoning though, it has road right-of-way and frontage for this purpose, so. Yeah.
Right, I realize it's
Yeah.
part of a different
Yeah.
bylaw. Just curious. Okay.
Mr. Boyd, could you answer those questions, please?
Yeah, I can. So as part of the subdivision requirement, upgrades were required to the frontage. There are still some requirements required, such as driveway access, and that needs to be tied into the roadway and it needs to be paved out front.
Good. And curbing as well, or?
As part of the driveway association, that'll come in.
Okay, good.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions, comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move on to the Anmore procedure bylaw. This was before us before, and there were some changes that had to be made, so they were made. So I'll now pass this over. Actually, we'll allow any public input is offered up with this amendment. If anybody would like to speak on to the Anmore procedure bylaw that is before us right now. Not seen any? Okay. Ms. Elric, are you able to, did somebody raise their hand or, oh, please come on up.
Jurgen Durkton, 1815 A East Road. I'm not familiar with public input as I've never used it before, but I was just wondering if council could clarify the mechanism of the 15-minute time period or limit. Is there going to be a clock that clock ticks down to 15 minutes and we stop? Or I'm just wondering if there is some sort of detail that you can offer us.
I try and do my best with using my clock, but we could incorporate something else that would be a little bit more visual and could be on the screen that other boards that I sit on does that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other? Okay. Could I get the recommendations that council adopt the Village of Anmore zoning amendment, or sorry, the council adopt the Anmore procedure bylaw number 704-2024. Could I get someone to move that recommendation? Moved. Seconded. Any discussion? Councillor Weber.
Sorry, did we not have to give that third reading again? Or do we just pass it?
We did that at the last, we actually went back and rescinded and then came back at it.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Just, thanks.
Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Okay, we're now on to the public notice bylaw amendment. Report dated January 17th from our Chief Administrative Officer. This was deferred from the January 21st regular council meeting. Ms. Elric.
Thank you. So this report and bylaw amendment is before you this evening as a result of the update to the Anmore procedure bylaw that was just passed. So it is just amending the posting places for public notices by removing Facebook as a public notice posting place. The village still will use Facebook, but as we don't have, much control over or any control over that medium, we prefer not to have it included in our bylaw. So now we will be using the Village of Anmore email subscription notification, physically posting it on the notice board and the Village of Anmore website, and of course any additional communication methods that council should ask for at the time. So the recommendation this evening would be that first, second, and third readings be given to Anmore public notice, bylaw amendment, bylaw 705/2025.
Someone to move that? Moved. Seconded. Any discussion? See none. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Ms. Elric, we're almost done. Okay. We'll now move on to the Anmore South OCP Amendment Community Engagement Plan Phase 3 and Consultation Referral Process. Report dated January 31st, 2025 from our planner. Mr. Joseph. And if you could make sure the mic is, nice.
Thanks, Mayor Kuhn. So the purpose of this report is to present Council with the Anmore South OCP Amendment Application and Neighborhood Plan Phase 3 Community Engagement Plan, as well as the OCP Amendment consultation requirements in accordance with Section 475 of Local Government Act. The engagement process was initiated as part of the Anmore South Official Community Plan Designation Bylaw Amendment number 686/2023. So in March 2024, Icona, the applicant, initiated the process for creating a neighborhood plan for Anmore South in accordance with the terms of reference approved by Council. Following Council direction, Phase 1 and 2 of the development of the neighborhood plan have been completed, and Phase 3 is now underway, which includes the development of a preferred land use plan. Following these recommendations, the Anmore South OCP Amendment Application and Neighborhood Plan Phase 3 Community Engagement Plan has been prepared by the Village's Community Engagement Consultant for Council's endorsement. Section 475 of the Local Government Act mandates that local governments must provide early and ongoing consultation opportunities for those affected by an official community plan amendment. To ensure compliance, a formal referral process for consultation is being proposed to ensure that the village fulfills the consultation requirements for Anmore South Official Community Plan Designation Bylaw Amendment number 686/2023. I'll refer to Therese Michelson, the Village Community Engagement Consultant, to provide a brief summary of the Phase 3 engagement plan.
Thanks, Josh. So the Phase 3 Community Engagement Plan is in alignment with the framework that we presented at the start of this process. It's more focused now, as you all recall, and was not quantitative. It was strictly, themes, key themes, overall information about the proposal, and it was really designed to inform the preferred land use plan and the neighborhood plan. So a lot of that work was done. And then, of course, in Phase 2, we received Council's direction around the land use plan. Phase 3 is now focused on the studies and the outcomes of those studies. So what did we learn about how the land use plan that's been put forward for consideration will affect the community of Anmore? So this phase of the engagement is outlined. It has a heavy load of inform, because a lot of this is answering questions that the community raised in the earlier phases, questions that council's raised over time, and the results of the studies. So we're providing not only highlights, but also posting those studies online. So there's a heavy amount of inform in this, and that is why we're recommending a direct mail in addition to putting the information on the website and on Have Your Say, so that the community can read up and also then click and go to those sites, pick up copies if they want the detailed plans. But we're trying to give them kind of a Cole's Notes version as well of here's the highlights, as well as highlighting or flagging answers to questions that have been raised. So here's what you asked us in Phase 1. Here's what we learned from the studies. So a heavy amount of inform. And then, of course, there is the referral letter that's been referenced here, which is a requirement of the Local Government Act. Those organizations that are listed here are consistent with what we had in the framework. This motion is just meeting some requirements of Section 475. And we've listed that. The letters go out. They have a 30-day time period to get back to us if they have any input or questions. So we would be sending that out to that list. And then the other part of the consult is the community consultation piece. What we're looking at for that is an open house. We'll be reaching out to our community, the council advisory committees again, as we have done in the past. We're suggesting a letter go out to offer to meet with community groups who may be interested. A community survey. We'd continue to use Have Your Say, which has the questions and comments that's been up throughout this entire process. And all of that would be done kind of in tandem. So the idea is that when we get the final content, we roll it out all at the same time.
Good. Thank you.
I'll just finish off here a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah. So for next steps, should council endorse the Anmore South OCP amendment application and neighborhood plan Phase 3 community engagement plan and the consultation referral process, staff will proceed with implementing Phase 3 of the community engagement, including distributing referral letters to persons, organizations, and authorities considered to be affected by the OCP amendment bylaw. Do you want the recommendation or?
Sure.
Yeah. Well, it's quite a long one, so I'll just say that the recommendation is that in relation to the Village of Anmore Official Community Plan Bylaw Amendment number 686, 2023, as recommended in the report dated January 31st, 2025.
Good. Yeah, so could I get someone to move that? Moved? Someone to second it? I think to put in layman's terms, I'm going to put it in just sort of layman's terms so everybody can understand where we're at. Hopefully I grasp it. The proposal initially came forward with a lot of hypothesis in regards to, and again, we've been talking about this land ever since I've been on council, which is from 2007, as a special study area. Again, I reiterate, former Mayor Weinberg thought it could be a high-tech center or a university or something like that, but being a professor, I think he just wanted a closer commute. But anyway, so this is it has been in our official community plan, and it's been there for, I guess, the last 2 or 3 OCPs that last 2 I've been involved with anyway. What this basically does is this council has looked at some things through it and said some things that we are interested in looking at. So now we actually have a plan with the input of all of council that we can actually get some tangibles out of and actually do some of the work. Because I know that one of the major concerns for this community is the financial aspect of how this development will affect the rest of the village and the current villagers here and from a financial point of view. Well, the problem is we could have never done that before until we actually firmed up a plan that had a specific number. Just like I heard repeatedly from people, well, what about traffic? Well, now we know that this plan is going to be hosting about 2,200 homes, and what those type of homes are. And they will take into consideration with that transportation plan how many cars will be there. Environment, same thing. We weren't sure how much of the site was going to be covered and what was there. So the plan now has finalized and really pinned down to where we're at right now, so we can actually get some data to see where this fits in with the community. And that's basically where we are right at this particular point right now. So I can tell you that as a council, we don't have those definitive numbers yet or that analysis yet. And when we do get it, you'll be getting it at the same time. And I really urge you strongly that if we do have an open house here on a Saturday, that I will ask that the proponent has all those experts there to be asked those questions directly if you have concerns about it and if you want answers, because that's the one thing that I've heard repeatedly is people want answers. And so I think this is going to be a great opportunity. I think hopefully we can do whatever means are, including even the signboards, to make sure that people come out to this. It'll be very unobtrusive in regards, is my hope. It'll be just have boards up, the specific professional in it, if it's an environmentalist or if it's a land economist in that, and people will be able to come up and ask them those specific questions and not have to go through the formality of coming to a meeting and maybe being a little bit more intimidated coming up to a microphone. We want, as we do, we want the facts. We want to understand this proposal and how it's going to affect our community. And really that is exactly where we're at. So I'm looking forward to getting all that data and then being able to make my analysis on my own, as I do with every decision that I made, and that when the decision is made, I've never had a problem with anybody ever coming up to me and asking me why I made a decision and being able to support it. I think the Have Your Say Anmore is going to be another key instrument that people are going to be able to, have any comments after and make sure they get on that. That will all be sort of dictated to us all and be part of a report that would come back. I'm also really looking forward to the committees actually digging into this and having something tangible to dig into. If it's the Environment Committee or whatever, and see what's there. I think the key thing is that we have to remember is that this land is going to be developed at some point. I've said very publicly, I certainly don't want it to go RS1 the way some areas of the other village have. I think that's a loss to this village, but I'm open to looking at. So it's been moved and seconded. I'll open up to other members of council. I've kind of rambled on, sorry. Councillor Wevering.
Yeah, I'm glad to get to this point as well. I mean, we've been talking about this for a long time, as long as I've been on council. So it's nice to see it actually move forward to get to that point, exactly what you just said, that we have an actual proposal in front of us. It's not speculation anymore. I want to spend a bit of time on this on our committees, particularly my Environment Committee. I think that's going to be an important part of it. So I'm going to be very heavily involved in creating the agenda for that, and I'll want some assistance from staff. I want to really go through everything. Have we got all the reports, all the technical studies done? No, we don't yet. Do we know? Maybe Ms. Mickelson through the chair?
We were advised this morning that the final technical studies would be ready in 3 weeks.
3 weeks, okay. Which ones are we missing through the chair?
We got what we asked, we have like drafts that have been submitted and staff have been reviewing it, so there's a bit of a back and forth process. Yeah. We also, as the engagement team, because we're not the subject matter experts, we asked for kind of the summary of the most salient points, and we've received drafts of 6 of those. We got those Thursday night, this past Thursday, and so they're still working on those. So it's kind of what we're trying to do is do as much work as we can to prepare the engagement materials while they're working out the final details. But okay. The final studies they're expecting, as they said, about 3 weeks for that.
Okay.
And it's a really good point. If I could just make everybody aware as well that those reports, as they come in from the proponent, will be vetted through our own staff to make sure that they make sense and that they're accurate. So. Yeah,
that was my next question, and also the comment. Comments we get from the public, I want those owned. Like going back to the stickum boards. Well, if one person puts 25 times I hate this, or one person puts 25 times I build this. We don't know who owns that statement. It really doesn't provide us a lot of good information. So I'm glad that everything is being properly vetted through staff, and then when we get a staff report, we can trust it because it's our people. Okay, and that's all I have to say.
Any other? Oh, Councillor Cryer.
Thank you, Mayor McEwen. I too am very happy that we're moving into phase 3. I'm looking forward to seeing the studies and having our people take a look at them and get more of an idea of where we're at with it. Completely agree with Mayor McEwen. I don't want to see RS1 down there. The landowners will be doing something, and I think it's great that we're able to have all of the back and forth conversation to get it the way the community wants it. So I'm very excited about that. The open house, I encourage everyone to come out. Do we have a timeline for that? Is that a Karen question or Therese?
We're trying to get it done as soon as possible, but we can't hold the open house until the studies are complete. And then we need a little bit of time. So that's why I was saying we're trying to create stuff
Okay.
and then we'll just make edits. So I don't want to say when, but we're hoping to start it as soon as possible. It's
Okay.
after
Yeah.
that 3 weeks.
It
So.
would be great if we could give enough advance notice so that people can be sure
Absolutely.
that they attend. And I also completely agree with Councillor Weberink that these anonymous, the anonymous feedback, I think we're to the time now where we really want to know who wants what and get an idea of everything. So I'm looking forward to it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor Richardson.
Okay, so one point of clarification. I think you said it's the proponent studies that our staff is reviewing and checking. I thought Anmore was going to hire their own consultants and do it independently of the proponents.
That's in essence what I said. They're going to be preparing reports that will come to us, but they will be vetted by our own people.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay, that's one.
yeah.
With respect to the Mickelson report suggestion here, I would like a letter to go to BC Hydro as well because of Burrard Thermal. I think that's important. My guess is Imperial Oil is covered because they are within 100 meters just across the road, so they'll get it. My issue here is,
Burrard Thermal, I don't believe is still owned by BC Hydro. It's been mothballed.
then the provincial government, whoever owns it. The point here is, I would, and suggested a long time ago, and still like to see a task force of all the potential people that would be affected by development on this part of Burrard Inlet come together. As an example, Vancouver did one for the central part of the harbor around Stanley Park and docks and everything else, so the old CP yards on Burrard Inlet, and did a comprehensive study of what it could look like, what services they need, and everything else that goes forward. And I still think a task force or some sort of coming together of all the parties involved is important. Icona talked about it last June and said there was one. It's been 7 months and it hasn't showed up, so I don't know if there is or not, but I think that's worthwhile. I like that it's going to be a quantitative assessment. That's important. One of the things I hear often is people would like a town hall. So we have an open house, but we don't have a town hall. Is it possible to add a town hall to the list?
That'll be part of the third reading.
Well, essentially, there's a public hearing.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't recommend a town hall at this stage. We want to be giving people an opportunity to hear a lot of information. We want to give them an opportunity to have a voice, which they will have either through the survey or at the open house. But we did an informal survey to see in the summertime to see what people wanted, and town halls did not come up as a big one.
Okay, because what I hear is people want to ask questions, and you can't in a public hearing, you can only make comments. And they want to hear what other people are asking, and if you have the board thing, you don't really hear what everybody else is asking, so you can't feed off it. I'll go with that. And then I have one small point in your, I guess it's your last page. You say, assessments to raise awareness in the community about how the preferred land use plan would affect Anmore. I think it should actually be in the surrounding communities. Please.
That's it. Okay. Councillor Trowbridge, do you have anything? Go ahead.
Yeah, 90% of it has been said, so I'll be brief. But I'm extremely pleased, as some or all have said, that we're finally have a proposal in front of us, and we're finally able to deal with technical studies and details that I very much want our residents to have access to. There, the days of conjecture and guessing and all of that are behind us, which I think is very healthy. And I'm anxious to hear feedback from the open house because we'll get access to all of that. We'll also get detailed reports from Have Your Say Anmore. I want to hear all those things. Uh, I think that it's now more relevant than ever because people will be informed. I'm also really excited about the format of the open house where individuals, without feeling any kind of public pressure or peer pressure, can go to the experts and ask whatever questions they want of the experts without having those filtered through staff or council. I love the concept of residents being able to express themselves directly to the people involved without filtration. I think this is absolutely the right process. I also do agree with Councillor Weberink, I think said it, or Richardson, I'm not sure. I think it was Weberink, in that I'm not eager to hear, one thing repeated 25 times by the same person. If people have comments through this process, we'll know that those comments are coming from a concerned individual, which I think is really valid, and I want to hear that stuff. That's about it.
Good. Thank you. I just, before I call the vote, Mr. Boyd or Mr. Joseph, I just need to flesh out this thing with the reports. So we have been given the technical reports. Is that true, or have we not been given the technical reports? First question. My second question is, do we have people in place to be able to analyze those reports? And if so, how long is that going to take? So where are we at with these technical reports at this point in time? If you could clarify that. Mr. Boyd.
Thanks, Mayor McEwen. Yeah, so we've received the reports. We received the reports, the majority of them, just before the Christmas break. So we've distributed them to our subject matter experts in each of those areas. 1, 2, 3. A number of them have gone through the first review. The financials will hopefully be completed for their first review the end of this week, where we've provided comments back to the proponent on the information provided. So it's been vetted and sent back for them to correct or provide a response back to any comments that we've provided. So as Therese Mickelson said earlier today, that process should be complete within the next couple of weeks and have finalized all the reports. I would say the reports provided have been comprehensive, and there hasn't been huge amounts of comments or rework required. So we're looking to wrap that up in the next few weeks, and then those reports will be released to the public on Have Your Say for their own perusal.
Yeah, because I think at this point that would preclude us scheduling until we can get a firm date for that, for the specific committees, the standing committees in regards to things that we're going to need to be able to, and we should be scheduling those as soon as possible as well. As Councillor Trowbridge said, about getting as much community engagement as we can with this open house and allowing people the time to be able to speak to the experts and actually challenge them and question them. I know that worked excellently when we did infill, when we had we actually had an open house with our economic, a land economist, and he was able to answer questions and really completely exhausted everybody in the audience that had a concern about what the CAC was at. But I think it's very important that these things get done as soon as possible, expedited, so that then the committees can meet and we can schedule the committees. So is it fair to say though that then we can start scheduling some of these meetings then? Because like I said, I want to give people as much notice as possible for the committees as well as the open house, which will be pretty well attended, I'm hoping, as well.
I believe so, Mayor McEwen. I think Some of the documents which get taken the longest are going to be the financial review documents, which perhaps the Parks Committee won't be so interested in. They'll probably be more interested in maybe the trails and environmental section, which those reports are closer to being completed. So I think what we can do is, as we come closer to the finalization of each report, we can start ticking off those committees
Perfect.
and send out
Perfect.
that information as soon as possible.
Good. Just follow-up question with Councillor Trowbridge.
Yeah, Chris just raised a point. So there are different emphases by different committees, and I'd like to give the Parks Committee plenty of time to think it through and grind it over. So as relevant reports become available, it would be great if we knew them as they came available so we could schedule individual committees that might not need, as you say, Chris, and I agree, might not need to pour over the financials or things like that.
I know.
I would also say that a majority of the reports, like I said, are very comprehensive, are very close to being finished already. We could also look to provide finalized reports with some red lines on them for any changes, so it's easy to see if anything has changed, and I can present that at the committee meetings as required as well, or prior to the committee meeting. I just give them page 27 has an update for you if you want to review it. So that'd be another way we could perhaps try and get those reports out sooner.
Good. Perfect. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Boyd. Thank you, Ms. Nicholson, and thank you, Mr. Joseph. Okay, we'll now move on to 135 Oak Court Development Variance Permit number DVP 2025-01. Report dated January 31st. Mr. Joseph, we saw this at the last council meeting, so let's have another go at it here.
Thanks, Mayor Pugin. So at the January 21st, 2025 regular council meeting, council authorized staff to issue notice regarding DVP 2025-01 for 135 Oak Court. Notices were sent to the affected properties and no responses were received. The original report to council is also attached for reference. So at the meeting, council requested clarification on fence regulations for retaining walls and the need to increase the maximum retaining wall height for the property based on a summary from the building official. The village zoning bylaws limit fence height to 1.8 meters. This includes both the fence and the retaining wall that is mounted on. However, there's also a section that states that if its combined height exceeds 1.8, such as in scenarios with 2 or more wall components for a retaining wall, such as the proposed wall supporting the septic field on the subject property, then the fence component cannot be taller than 1 meter. Additionally, the building inspector clarified that retaining walls do not require guards unless they constitute an exit path or a means to exit a building in accordance with the BC Building Code. So in this particular case, a fence is not required for the retaining wall in question, and one has not been proposed. So here's a brief summary of the village inspector's accounts, an overview of the retaining wall compliance history. So initially in June 2024, a permit was approved for a 2-tiered northern retaining wall to act as a rockfall protection hazard wall and support the sewer infrastructure, and no walls were proposed along the neighboring property to the east. However, on October 2024, an inspection revealed that a single rockfall hazard wall had been constructed instead, along with an unpermitted 2-tier wall along the neighboring property supporting the septic field. Subsequently, a stop work order was issued requiring revised engineering plans and zoning compliance. The changes in field resulted from alterations due to unexpected bedrock being discovered during excavation. So staff reviewed the zoning bylaw and clarified that the as-constructed rockfall hazard wall exceeded the allowable height and required a variance. Additionally, there was initial confusion over the section 5.12.4b of the zoning bylaw, as it does not clarify whether the 1.2 meter separation is between the inner faces or the outer faces of the retaining walls. Regardless, staff applied the former and requested a variance. So the retaining wall supporting the septic field has a lock block design width of 0.75 meters and has a separation of 0.75 meters, totaling 1.5 meter run. This is similar to a conforming design, which may have a greater separation of 1.2 meters, but a reduced retaining wall width of 0.3 meters. So in both scenarios, it creates a desirable slope aligned with the intent of the zoning bylaw. Based on the geotechnical hazard design recommendations and structural assurances for the rockfall hazard wall to the north, and with consideration to the slope lot and uneven bedrock, staff still support the proposed height variance of the rockfall hazard wall to accommodate its function. So the motion on table is that council issue development variance permit DVP 2025-01 to vary section 5.12.3 and section 5.12.4B of the Anmore zoning bylaw 568/2017 to increase the maximum retaining wall height from 1.8 meters to 3 meters and to decrease the minimum separation distance between two retaining walls from 1.2 meters to 0.75 meters for 135 Oak Court. Thank you.
Could I get someone to move the recommendation? Moved, seconded. Before I open up to, I just need some clarity because I'm still a little confused on this. So on page 125B, it says, an overview is provided by the village building inspector summarizing how the retaining walls were permitted. It was then found to deviate from the approved plans and required to apply for a DVP. So my question there is, why wasn't this addressed before construction?
Thanks, Mayor. So talking with the building official, infield kind of alterations are kind of typical, and typically they require a retroactive building permit kind of alteration to make it comply. So in this specific case, there was a two-tier retaining wall that was approved. However, during excavation, they've changed up the design essentially for a one wall component retaining wall, which exceeded the height restriction due to the bedrock, uneven bedrock at the bottom.
Okay, so I have a subsequent question for that and then a comment. Further down there, it says discussions with the village planning staff clarified that the as-constructed walls exceeded height limits requiring a DVP for approval. Again, I would ask, why was then construction still allowed to continue?
Oh, sorry. Thanks for the question.
Yeah.
So like this was an infield alteration, which they did not consult the building official when they made them. Only after an inspection did he realize or identify that it was a one-tier wall, not the two that was approved. Okay. So a stop work order was issued, and basically they had to submit new engineering drawings as well as meet the zoning compliance.
So if they submitted new plans, they theoretically couldn't be approved because it doesn't meet our zoning bylaw.
The new plans may not be approved unless they meet the zoning bylaw.
Right, but still construction is continuing.
Construction happened as the building permit was issued and the design changed during the infield excavations.
But it's been ongoing for the last weeks.
I cannot speak to what's happening right now. I'm not aware, but yeah.
Yeah, so which gets back to the big question I have is, what happens if we don't approve this?
Yeah, to the chair. Essentially, Section 57 notice could be placed on title. We would ask the applicant to comply with the zoning compliance first, so alterations to the design in field to make it comply. I think in this particular case, it might be challenging just because of the uneven bedrock and the minimum 1.5 meters it has to be above grade to have a rock catchment wall. With the slope, it just makes it a little bit difficult to meet that. So
I think you're getting, maybe for me a little too, I'm just simply on process.
right, okay. Yeah.
And the process is very simply this. If something doesn't comply, they have to rework the plans and bring back a submitted drawing, engineered drawing, as you said. If those still don't comply, a DVP has to be asked for. I would have thought at that point they would be coming to council to get a DVP before proceeding. It seems to me that the progression and the procedure has been proceeding all along, and that's what I'm getting to. If this council doesn't pass this, what happens here?
Yeah, I mean, a building official will essentially ask it to be altered so that it complies or removed or further kind of enforcement such as Section 57. Kind of.
I'm not going to, I'll open it up to anybody else who has any questions. Councilor Richardson.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same train as Mayor McEwen here. Are there any penalties? Like, they did an infield modification, they deviated from the drawings which were approved. Last week or 2 weeks ago, we discussed a shed that was built and we're putting liens or notices on land titles against it. And they continue the work. I've gone by, they continue working. There seems to be no penalty for what they've done. So shouldn't there be at least a fine of some sort that going forward? Like something doesn't line up other than somebody does something wrong and Anmore seems to bend them to make it possible. And if we're going to do something like Anmore South, there'll be all sorts of things like that. And I think we have to be pretty rigorous in our bylaws and enforcements of bylaws. So are there fines, or is that the other department?
To the chair, I believe there is fines for contraventions for the building permit. What the amounts are, I'm not aware, but I can circle back with the building or the bylaw officer and kind of get some more information on that.
Councillor Trowbridge.
Yeah, I'm aligned with Mayor McEwen and Councillor Richardson. The fact that violations are ignored and production continues is troublesome. I also don't want to create undue hardship, because if I'm understanding the process, the discovery of bedrock in the specific situation may sort of not condone, but may support the action that was taken place. However, it doesn't follow appropriate procedures. So if we're going to approve this, if we're not going to stop them and have them tear it out and redo it properly, then at least there should be a monetary penalty.
Councillor Weber.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. That makes a lot of sense. I don't want to see people walking all over us. We have bylaws for a reason. So I think it would be reasonable to work with them, but there should be some sort of fine. There should be some sort of penalty. And if you're going to come back with more information and this is going to come back to a subsequent meeting, I would like to see everything stop there for the 2 weeks until this is approved, just out of respect for our process.
No. Oh, Mr. Boyd.
I think a couple of things, Mayor McEwen. First off, it would appear that a stop work order was issued according to the staff report. I don't know if that was subsequently removed. As part of a stop work order, there is a significant fine levied on top of that before a stop work will be removed from site. I think maybe based on the conversations happening tonight, it might be appropriate to place another stop work order on this wall until further clarification is provided on why and if this could be built any other way.
I think that's appropriate. So the amendment that Mr. Boyd put forth, I'm going to take that as a friendly amendment, I believe, and I'll just see if council is fine with that, that a cease work get issued until we get some more details in regards to this project. And that, do I have someone to move the amendment, second the amendment, second? Any discussion on the amendment?
As much as I want to fine and, be hard, I'm also, like Councilor Weverink, I don't want to unduly punish the landowner. So I don't know what's involved in all this. Are we costing them $50K by making them stop for 2 weeks? Like, I have no feel on that development and property and size of the house, et cetera, so some insight into that would be appreciated if possible.
Yeah, I don't think any of us want to punish the homeowner at all in regards to this. It has been a challenge for them in regards to their geotechnical aspect in that. But again, we have to stick with consistency in regards to what the procedures are in that. And I think the thing that worried me was what would happen if we didn't issue this. Really, in regards to this project, is would and theoretically, I would think that somebody would, until this procedure is done through council, would have held off in moving their project forward in that. So I think, like I said, I'm not interested in holding them up, but I think that until the next council meeting, I think it's relevant of this council to get a little bit more in depth of where we're at really with this project and the consequences of what would happen if we didn't approve it as an alternative, and as well as if there's any fines being issued and where it is with, because as we said, our manager of development services, Mr. Boyd, isn't even aware whether or not there's a stop work order being issued or not. I can tell you that there is work going on though right now. So we don't even know that. So I think we need some more clarity into this. So I'm going to move deferment to the following meeting, if that's all right. So it's been moved and seconded. I'll call the question for deferment for this thing. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move on to proposed zoning amendment for the Village Hub. A report dated January 31st, 2025 from our planner. Mr. Joseph again.
Thank you. So this report seeks council's direction to amend Anmore zoning bylaw 568/2017 for the Village Hub at 2697 Sunnyside Road. The proposed amendment would rezone the property from civic institutional P1 to a new zone that accommodates both institutional and commercial uses at the village multi-use facility. So the Village Hub was completed in early 2024 and currently operates under the civic institutional P1 zone, which supports government and nonprofit uses but excludes commercial uses. The property is designated Village Center Commercial in the official community plan designation map shown on attachment 1, which encourages both institutional and commercial uses on the lands. Specific OCP policies promote small-scale commercial uses within the facility, as well as community services to create a vibrant village center. While the property is designated as Village Center Commercial in the OCP, its civic institutional zoning does not reflect its intended multi-use role, and expanding commercial uses across all civic institutional lands would conflict with the OCP's specific intent for the Village Hub. Therefore, it's necessary to create a unique zoning designation for this area, distinct from other civic institutional zones in Anmore. So to support the Village Hub's multi-use function and align with the OCP, the proposed amendment is to rezone 2697 Sunnyside Road from civic institutional to a new Village Center institutional zone, P3. This new zone would permit both institutional uses, such as civic services and public gatherings, as well as small-scale commercial activities, including retail food services, and commercial recreation. The new zoning would largely maintain the current regulations for civic institutional uses, including parcel size, building setbacks, height, and coverage, while only introducing additional accessory commercial uses to support the multi-purpose role of the Village Hub. So some of the new definitions include retail food services. This would allow for coffee shops, sandwich bars, etc. Retail, this would support vending stalls at special community events held at the Community Hub. Commercial recreation, and this would support sort of yoga or similar classes held at the Village Hub. The Village Hub has limited parking on site, but may still choose to designate specific parking allocations for the new uses. Staff have initially proposed a parking allocation based on 1 parking space per 40 square meters of gross floor area, which is typical for small retail areas. However, these values will be reviewed prior to drafting the bylaw to ensure that they are compatible with the current parking requirements. So the proposed zoning amendment ensures that commercial activities are restricted to the Village Hub property and not extended to all civic institutional lands, which aligns with the OCP's intent. The change will allow for the Village Hub to function as a multi-use community gathering space, supporting both institutional and commercial uses, contribute to the development of a vibrant village center.
Good. Do you want to read the recommendation?
Actually, just briefly, there's a few next steps. There's some options for council. So if council directs staff to proceed with the amendment, following the procedural options are available. Number 1, by authorizing the recommended motion, council can proceed with first and second reading, followed by a notice of public hearing. And at a subsequent meeting and following the public hearing, council can provide third reading or both third and fourth readings at the same meeting. Alternatively, if the proposed bylaw is consistent with the OCP, which it is, council may choose to waive the public hearing with all readings taking place at 1 or more meetings. If this option is chosen, a notice of waiver of public hearing will be required prior to the first reading of the bylaw. Thank you.
I think it's appropriate that we do a public hearing just because it's a new use in this area and not in residential. This is really just kind of a technical, but this is for the building or the area right underneath the great room, which is proposed as a bakery coffee shop. We have to just change the zoning for that. I can tell you that the village right now is in talks with somebody, and we're keeping our fingers crossed that we could have somebody in there operating, and hopefully by summer. So really exciting times. So really looking forward to it, and really great idea to bring community together to be able to for that. So the preferred recommendation is that, which one, Mr. Joseph?
So the preferred recommendation is that staff be directed to draft a bylaw to amend Anmore zoning bylaw 568, 2017 to rezone the village hub at 2697 Sunnyside Road from civic institutional P1 to a new zone that accommodates institutional and commercial uses at the village hub multi-use facility.
Perfect. Could I get someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Open up for discussion. Councillor Richardson.
Okay, so I tried to do the math, and I couldn't make it out, and I couldn't tell if parking is inclusive. For example, if we're out of office space or out of office hours for the civic part, do those parking spots then become free for the other usage, or do you have to have, 10 spots for that, 5 spots for that, and 6 spots for that? Because I think we have, 15 parking spaces right now or something like that? Do you know the number? Because what I'm worried about is based on the 40 meters squared, if this was passed today, we wouldn't be in compliance with our own bylaw. Do we know the answer?
Yeah, through the chair. So there's a roughly 19 if you include the 2 electric stalls, 2 accessory, and the 2 just on the north side of the parcel, as well as 13 to the south end, so 19 total. That commercial space down there would roughly equate to 1 parking stall requirement. However, as mentioned, I will do a final review prior to the actual numbers to make sure that the requirements are met. Because as the bylaw reads, it needs to be, it needs to meet all requirements.
Good. Any other comments? See none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Joseph. Okay, we'll now move on to 11A, new business, 2025 Anmore Community Grant Requests. A report dated July 31st, 2025 from our Manager of Financial Services. I will just simply say this: if we get to the Anmore Youth Group, I will be recusing myself as my wife participates in the, I don't think she is the bingo caller, but she is the, she has something to do with the bingo anyway, and it's very passionate about it, but I will recuse myself if we get into individual grant requests. But I will, the overview is, I'll stay here for now. So is there any, so basically we approve the following grants. We normally have a budget of about $7,000 per year. I did look at the breakdown. I noticed that the Friendly Forest Preschool has 2 line items, 2 asks, as they have in the years past. Last year they received $1,300. Now they're asking for $2,200. If we were to bring that down in line to $1,500 and keep everything else the same, we'd be well within our budget. So anyway, I'll open up for Councillor Weber.
I would agree with that. I think it's a great solution.
Councillor Richardson.
Okay, just as context, I like grants that go to bodies that volunteer and are frugal as stuff within the community. With respect to Friendly Forest, they're asking for a new stovetop. They can get a used stovetop. Like, I would cut them down to $600 total. Last time they wanted a new commercial grade dishwasher, which wasn't required by regulation. I prefer that they reuse and recycle. I just gave a fridge to some share program where they're recycling food that comes out of grocery stores to go to people in need. So that was free to them, and I think the same thing could be done here, so reuse and recycle. With respect to the Anmore Youth Group, they are new. I don't know if $1,000 is right for a new group. I would like to do part of it and then.
Just some clarity.
Thank you to the chair. Regarding the youth group, that used to be our Anmore Youth Committee, which is now dissolved, and they always had $1,000 for their arts and crafts. So that's why the amount is the same.
So I would give Friendly Forest $600 total and do all the rest, and that brings us to $6,037.
Councillor Cryer.
Thank you, Mayor McEwen. I don't disagree with what Councillor Richardson is saying because that did cross my mind. New versus used oven stovetop. But having said that, I'm fine if we just did a straight 1,200 for both, or half and half, or it doesn't even, as long as it's under our budget line, if we do 1,500 for both, we're still below 7, correct?
Yes, if you apply 1,500 for that they could use for a used stove and their arts and supplies, then you would be have it a total of 6,937, which is under our $7,000 limit.
And I think it would be good to split it rather than tell them they can rather than have us pick.
Would you like to take Councillor Richardson's recommendation of $600 towards the stove and remaining $900 towards program expenses?
Well, I don't think we need to make that call either.
My worry is that we
Yeah.
haven't funded the programming previously. But I was just going to open up sorry.
I'm finished, yes.
Councillor Trowbridge, do you have any comments on here? Sorry
Yeah,
to put
I'm
you on the spot.
No, not at all. I'm sort of aligned with Doug as well. But like Polly said, as long as we keep it under the budget, I can go higher than that. I would think 1,300 like they had last year would be enough, though.
Okay, good. Councillor Richardson.
Just a final comment. So when I look at the budgets of all these groups, some people are in desperate need of money. Some people have hundreds of thousands of dollars. So just to be under budget, giving one group, slightly less to make it under budget doesn't make sense to me. If we're going to spend that money, I prefer we top up the Scouts by another $200. The Garden Clubs gets $100, and the money actually goes more into the community rather into new appliances. So my preference is that's where the money would go. It's the taxpayers' money. It's the volunteers in the community, and I think they should be supported prior to appliances. So
could I make the following suggestion then? In the previous few years, in 2022, we gave $1,000. 2023, it was $1,200. 2024 was $1,300. Maybe we just go back to the $1,200 and call it a day. Those extra funds will stay within the village because we do get things that come up to us throughout the year, i.e. sometimes the garden club will come in for specific planting and we'll provide that planting. So is $1,200? Okay, I think we have a consensus. Do you have that then, Ms. Martin?
So for the recommendation, we will take it as recommended, except for the Friendly Forest Preschool will receive $1,200 for a total of $6,637.
Perfect. Could I get, so it's been moved and seconded? It hasn't been moved and seconded. So could I get someone to move that recommendation? Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? See none. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone. We'll now move on to the Anmore Youth Group Insurance. The recommendation that staff be directed to add Anmore Youth Group as an associate member of the Village of Anmore liability insurance policy. Ms. Martin.
So this is in addition to the Anmore community group being disbanded, it is now the Anmore Youth Group. They used to be covered under our insurance, under our community insurance, but now they need their own insurance. We have other community groups that also receive a waiver under our insurance policy. This is where some of the additional funds could be used. The value of the insurance named under our policy is about $250.
Good, good. Thank you. Okay, it's been moved in second. I'll call the question. All those. Oh, this is the youth one. Sorry. Could I get someone to move the youth insurance? Move. Second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And then we move on to the British Columbia Water Meter Pilot Project, report dated January 31st. Ms. Martin again.
Thank you. This is to present council an opportunity to apply for grant funding under the BC Water Meter Pilot Project. It's come to our attention that the province has $50 million to commit to this pilot project, and they're looking for small communities of residential homes similar to what Anmore has. And we have the ability to replace all of our aging systems at the value of just over $1 million and at 100% funded grant if we apply for this grant.
Okay, so the recommendation that staff apply for the 2025 British Columbia Water Meter Pilot Project and that the village commit to the payment of any cost overruns or eligible expenses to complete the project should the application be successful. Could I get someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Any discussion?
One comment there on the promise we're making to complete this at our own expense. Like, my understanding is we're replacing aged meters that are beyond 10 years. There's many in the village that are 20, 25 years, as far as I understand. I would suggest that we don't replace those at our own expense. If they're only 12 years old, we hang on to them for another 5 or 6 years, unless it's particularly bad and leaky and not charging anybody water. So I don't want the liability. I want the grant. The work's good, but I don't want the liability of being forced to finish something that's perhaps not completely necessary.
Ms. Martin?
Thank you for that. The specifics of the grant is that we would cover our cost overruns. However, we were allowed to apply for up to $5 million for this grant, and we estimated that it would be just over $1 million to replace our H systems. So they're having us put that in the recommendation so that we can't come back and say we won't finish the project because we're in a cost overrun.
And I can tell you that many municipalities have applied for this. It wasn't out in the open as much as we had thought, but I can tell you, I believe our Belcarre has applied for this as well in that. So anyway, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Martin. Okay, we're on to the mayor's report. Just a couple things. January 27th, I attended a federal transit announcement. Unfortunately, it was really just a re-announcement, and it is for $60 million a year for 10 years in funding. Unfortunately, TransLink needs about $600 million a year to keep current service levels. TransLink is in a really tough financial position right now. I can tell you right now that there is an incredible push from the provincial government to come at the municipalities and to add this to our property taxes to fund. I am fighting as vigorously as I can against that. We already pay a significant amount with our assessments, and we don't really get the service that's there that other communities get. This also includes for MRN funding. So we have two, they're part of the major road network, that's East Road and Sunnyside. So we get some funding from TransLink because they're used as a municipal regional body for upkeep, for snow removal, and those sorts of things. But I'm worried that that's going to be lost as well, which would be further downloading from the provincial government onto the municipality. And that would be a significant effect on us. January 30th, I attended the Home Builders Legends Dinner. And I'll tell you, it's a challenging times in the home building industry as well. You know, I think we're being told that there's a housing crisis. Well, I can tell you that between the cities of Burnaby and Surrey, there's about 60,000 building permits sitting at the approval desk that nobody wants to pick up because the economics don't work right now. Land is very expensive and the cost to build is very expensive. And I can also tell you that they had one of the speakers from Westbuild up there, and he actually reiterated something he said once to us before, which was to the Mayor's Council, that there's a ton of room in property taxes compared to us charging DCCs. Now, DCCs are development cost charges, and we've just instituted those because a bunch of us are a big proponent that growth should pay for growth. You can't build these towers and all this development without the proper development, and to expect the municipality to be paying for this is not fair. I can tell you as well that in the city of Burnaby, with my colleague Mayor Hurley, they've done an estimate, and it's about for every 100 meters of road to facilitate the new building of Bill 44 of 4plexes and 6plexes, it's about $10 million per 100 kilometers of road. So City of Burnaby is going to be looking at billions and billions of dollars of infrastructure upgrades to be able to facilitate the new requirements of Bill 44, which is just staggering. And they're expecting the municipality to pay for this. Which leads me into that property taxes and the governments, both senior levels of government, are putting intense pressure on us to fix their problem. And I stress it's their problem. We only capture as a municipality about 10% of total taxation. And the senior levels of government have just not efficiently and done proper fiscal management, and which we're hearing more and more. We're hearing from the province, for example, they don't even have where this money is going to come from to be able to keep transit running. We have a Broadway line that is just going to be completed, and we don't even have funding to be able to operate that line once it's completed. That's the sort of challenges that are going on right now, and it's not going to get any better. I can tell you though that we, as you saw tonight, we fight over $300 or $400 to make sure that it's bestly allocated in our community. And you know, I take great pride in the fact that for the last, well, since 2009, we started on a fiscal plan here, and it's reaping incredible rewards. And I'm sort of having a preliminary conversation with our financial manager earlier, and you know, I'm really pleased at where we're going to be coming in at, and the explanation of where everything is at. So, you know, it's why it's so important, and we bring on developments. First thing we want to check is to make sure that they're going to be not a burden onto us in regards to some of the developments that have happened here in the past. So that's all I have for my mayor's report, but please keep in tune in regards to what the provincial government is trying to be downloading on us for additional costs. So, councillor reports. Nothing? Councillor Weber.
I attended an APC meeting. I can't recall the date. I also attended a first Anmore Scouts Guild meeting. So the Guild is a bunch of, I'll just call them old Scouters, that are sort of set up as a bit of a charity to assist with the current Anmore Scouts, maybe do some fundraising for them that can transcend years. So kind of nice to be back in it. I think it was in it for 17 years. So just another thing to do. But it was good. Good connecting with old friends.
Good. Any other? Oh, Councillor Cryer.
Apologies. Thanks, Mayor McEwen. I want to say thanks to staff and Public Works for taking good care of the roads this past weekend. They were out a lot with the little thing you guys are, Kubota?
Bobcat, yeah.
Bobcat,
Kubota,
whatever
yeah.
that is. Look at me talking machines. But they did a great job. I unfortunately left the house at the worst time, and by the time I came back an hour later, the roads were great. So they've been very busy.
Yeah, it is kind of not common for us to have snow and cold carrying on for a few days, so it has been very interesting. So, Councillor Trowbridge.
Yeah, just briefly, I wanted to echo that. I've been watching the street around my house with my cameras, and the cleaning has been very efficient, as it always is. I also attended an APC meeting. I think it was last Tuesday, or Thursday. I can't remember, but that was interesting as well. And other than that, I'm just suffering down here in the heat.
Move on to the Chief Administrative Officer's report. Do you have anything?
I would just like to provide this from our CEO, Karen Elric, and she would also like to acknowledge the efforts of the Public Works crew who have been working around the clock during the snow event on plowing and snow and ice removal throughout the village. Also a reminder to residents to park vehicles on your property rather than on the street during the snow events to allow our equipment to effectively clear the roads.
Good, okay. So we have some information items. The Tri-Cities Healthier Community Partnership meeting minutes for the meeting held on November 21st. And now I'll open up to public question period. Public is permitted to ask questions of council regarding any item pertaining to village business. 2-minute time limit applies to speakers. Any public questions? No? Okay. Could I get a motion to adjourn? Moved. Second. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming out on this cold, snowy night.